PGA Nation, we are back and we've missed you. We had to take a week off last week. We apologize, but we're back and we're psyched to crown a new king of the draft this week. The Truist Championship, first of its kind. It's going to be a lot of fun. Elevated event, no cut, a lot of big names. This is the exciting golf we've been waiting for. We got through almost the preseason of golf to finally get to these events, and that's where we have some fun. And while things pick up, we brought in the big guns. We got in the big guns to draft with us. We're going to have a four-man draft tonight with Joe Nicely drafting with us. Thanks a lot for coming on tonight, Joe. Joe, how you doing?
Hey, Joel, I'm doing great, man. It's good to talk to you again, and always good to see Spencer. I'm happy to be on with you boys. This is a cool event. Kind of getting ramped up for the PGA Championship next week. We got a great field, an interesting golf course that we know basically nothing about, so it's going to be fun. I'm interested to see what direction you guys go this week.
It's going to be interesting because it's in Flavortown, Pennsylvania. I had to say that it's not Flowertown, but it sounds like Flavortown, so it was kind of funny. But you're right. The new course makes this really interesting, but I think it's going to make it a lot of fun. If you follow our show, you've seen it. If you've been regular, it's been on every week. Joe's been on and drafted with us before. You know already. If you follow his content, Joe's extremely sharp. You're going to make some money, win some bets following his content. So good luck drafting against him. We've made it a whole lot harder for Team Audience to get a win. But Spence, you requested before the show started to get the first pick. And I granted it to you. There might be some controversy with that, but you're going to pick first. And audience, Spencer put you in the last spot. So take up your gripes with him. You're going last. But Spence, tell me, how you doing tonight and why'd you want the first pick?
I mean, to be honest with you, Joel, I don't know. It's been a couple of weeks now. I don't know who's supposed to have the first pick. I know it's not you and I because we had the number one pick when we did the team competition out at the Zurich. I don't believe we won. Don't know who the winner was. Probably the audience would be my guess to that. So I apologize to the audience that, yes, you guys did get put into the fourth spot. It has nothing to do with anything other than there is a player that I want at the top. We will have that discussion as we go throughout the show. But, I think as you guys said at the beginning of this, it's a unique tournament where there's only a 72-man field, but there's no data points for us to be able to pull from. So when we talk about the course and we talk about this, it's going to come down to viewpoints and strategies. And everybody's going to land on different aisles of what that ends up being. And I think based off of that answer, you might see a little bit more spread out ownership unless groupthink mentality ends up coming into play, which sometimes ends up being the case. But I'll tell everybody what my thoughts are on this course shortly.
Yeah, your work cut out with you on the course breakdown because there ain't much information to go off of, but it still will be critical just to get an understanding of the course, get an understanding of what type of profile golfer you're going to want to target this week to give yourself an edge. It is a little bit different strategy-wise because it is a no-cut event, so everyone's going to get 4 rounds. So, it gives you probably a little bit more of an opportunity to do stars and scrubs and take a risk on some lower price guys who will be guaranteed 4 days. Spence, I'm going to turn it right back over to you. I'd love to hear how you're breaking this course down and what you're looking for in Flowertown, but Flavortown's more fun.
Yeah, so we have Philadelphia Cricket Club, 7,119 yards, par 70, bent grass greens. It's going to be what you see when you look up this course. Very first bit of information that we know to be true here. And as I said, a lot of this other stuff are unknown variables that are going to come into play. But this club was founded in 1854. It's often called the oldest country club in the United States. It measures in at that uninspiring total that I just talked about at that sub 7,200 yardage. But I kind of think that there's 2 different ways that we can view this here because at least on a scorecard perspective, it's very easy to understand how this course will carry more punch than just that yardage indicates. There's not all of this baked in distance at any singular location. You get a really short par 3. You don't get any long par 5. So, I don't know just at the surface level of this, if this is necessarily as short as it looks on paper. And I think if you hear viewpoints and you hear people talk about this course, one of the things that I've consistently heard over and over again, and maybe this is where groupthink mentality starts coming into play a little bit, is I have heard over and over again that distance is going to be one of the most critical factors here. You need to bypass all the bunkers at the property. If you can do that through the air, it oftentimes in a lot of people's minds seems to present this perceived angle for success. But I'm going to be a little bit different this week on how I viewed this property. I think that while the fairways do open up once you get past those targets, and certainly when you have distance, that's always helpful at the end of the day. I'm not so sure that the off the tee metrics are going to be as pronounced as being touted in the industry as of this moment. I viewed this course as a very highly forgiving test when you had a driver in hand. When you look at my model over at Rotoballer, that's a lot of those answers that you see over and over again are these guys that may not be the best drivers of the ball. There's countless forced layups throughout the property. There's this natural predisposition for accuracy when you kind of start considering the fact that, in my opinion, when you're hitting an iron out of a clean lie from 125, it might very well be better than hitting it out of the rough from 75 yards in that thicker patch of rough that could come into play. So my model projected an above average driver is going to probably generate about 50% of their shots from 125 yards and in with their second shot. For me, and this is an answer that I've given quite frequently on a lot of tests like this is a pitch and putt tournament. I'm trying to find players that can take advantage with their short iron proximity, players that are more likely to make those putts once they do give themselves the opportunity. And at the end of the day, the green complex is something that's at least noteworthy because it looks fast, it looks firm, bent grass greens. I think there's a little bit of a diabolical setup to these, that it's not some straightforward test. So I want players that can create opportunities, and I want players that give themselves the ability to make those putts. And that's going to really walk us into who my number one choice is, who I wanted here. But I don't know, Joe, do you have any thoughts on this course before we move into the actual draft?
Yeah, I think you made a ton of great points, Spencer, and always love to hear your thoughts on golf courses, especially ones we don't see every year. But we're making a lot of educated guesses, and I'm never going to be a guy that's going to argue against distance. I would probably wait a little bit less this week than on a normal week, just because, we're talking about a 7,100 yard golf course. There are landing areas where these guys are trying to hit in order to get the correct angles into greens. I think this is an old school Tillinghast layout, guys. So it's kind of a classical golf course where angles are going to come into play more than we see like at a bomb away TPC Craig Ranch last week. So, and those are the kind of golf courses I like. So, I kind of still got the NFL draft in my head. So when I'm not really sure, I kind of fall back on best available. So I'll be looking at a lot of tee to green stuff, a lot of overall ball striking stuff, guys that can scramble. So we're just making educated guesses this week, but love everything that Spencer put out there about the golf course.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's the only way to do it. I will add, though, as always, we're always prioritizing form. Right, there's some guys that are playing better than others. I think that just gets weighted a little bit more because of the question marks around the course. You just want guys who are playing well, playing better than their baseline, guys who are in their best form. And there's a few guys that are kind of spiking right now. So it will be interesting to see if those guys get drafted and breaking it down. But we're about to dive into the draft. But I first want to thank the audience. The folks are in the chat already. Courtney, Hank Byers, Rombo. Rombo already got Rom winning, which is interesting since Rom doesn't play till next week, at least on the PGA Tour. But not surprised there. We really appreciate you guys logging on tonight and drafting with us. You guys will be drafting fourth, but our show relies on your guys' efforts. So we really super appreciate you guys getting your nominations in and having a great draft with us tonight. Before I pull up the draft board, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to toot my own horn and quickly acknowledge I draft, and you guys, if you follow our show regularly, I pretty much take Andrew Novak at an absurd rate. And Andrew Novak, even though I didn't draft him on the show, I at least did mention before the show mentioned that I suggest you take him at the Zurich. I thought they had a chance to come out and win, and they went out and won. So because Andrew Novak's my guy, I couldn't let the show go on without at least giving him his due. Congratulations, Andrew Novak, for coming along. And you can see he's peaking now. Like, he's finally come along where I can't imagine they're going to continue to price him in the low 7K range anymore with the way he's playing. But Andrew Novak, my guy, finally came through. So super excited for him. But the draft for tonight at the Truist is on, pulling the draft board up. As we said, Spencer demanded the first pick. He's got something up his sleeve. He'll be going first. Joe, you're a second. I'm third. Audience, you will have two. You'll be going fourth. You get two in a row. In case you're new to the show tonight, or if you just a quick explainer of how the draft works, we're drafting a traditional snake style draft like you would in any fantasy football league. 4 picks. You do have to draft within the DraftKings salary. So you have to be able to actually afford your lineup and play it on DraftKings. So what that means is you can't just take all the best golfers. You have to make sure you draft with salaries included, so you make sure you can actually afford your lineup. All right, without further ado, with the first pick, Spence, you're on the clock.
So I gave myself the number 1 pick for one reason. I wanted to redeem myself for, if you have followed my content for a long time, you will know that I am quite arguably the biggest Jason Day fan that there is out there. And the very first article that I wrote this week was about Jason Day. Well, in natural Jason Day fashion, he withdraws from the tournament before it starts. And for anybody who knows how this little thing has gone on, I've transitioned quite frequently to Wyndham Clark. This is a golfer that I have been on multiple times in tournaments where he's won twice at 100-1, US Open, Pebble Beach, or 2 spots. And one of the things when you look at Pebble Beach, it's a very similar setup to where I called it a pitch and putt. It's golfers that can, from short iron proximity ranges, create opportunities for themselves and then have the potential to make the putts from 15 feet and in. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to get made. We talked about how difficult that these greens can be already. There's going to be a lot of misses that come into play. I just want to find the golfer that my model believes is going to create the most opportunities and then is going to make more putts than everybody else. And that pitch and putt answer quite frequently leads me in this direction of Wyndham Clark. So I am going to take Wyndham Clark at $7,900. I think that there is a case to be made that he is one of the best values on the board. If you stay till the very end, I will have a matchup that I will give out that involves Wyndham Clark. So it's a little teaser to the end there. But I think Clark has massive upside that is not necessarily being accounted for with his ownership because of this subpar current form that has come into play. I liked him at the Zurich. Him and Taylor Moore did not look good. And specifically, Wyndham Clark did not look good there. But I think this is a prime bounce back spot for him where I agree with you, Joel. You want to find golfers in form, but to me, this is one of those spots in a no-cut tournament. We get a little bit of upside here on Wyndham at about 10% ownership. I think the ceiling is very, very high for Wyndham here.
Boom. Off the board, first overall pick, Wyndham Clark. I like what you did there. I like how you demanded the first pick and didn't go and take Rory or somebody like that. You went and took Wyndham Clark, which I like. At, 7,900, I think it's a really good pick. I mean, the upside's there for a guy in the 7K range. Joe, I would love to hear from you. Is Wyndham Clark on your radar this week?
I'm not as big a Wyndham guy as Spencer is. I feel like you can definitely ride him when the form's there. And he's showing a little bit of form, so I know where Spencer's going here. Also kind of the pitch and putt aspect, you get Wyndham with the wedge in his hand. He's really dangerous. He can make birdies in bunches. So totally get where Spencer's coming from. I like some other guys in that 7K range better. And that's probably where I'm going to go this week. There are a couple guys I've got tagged down there that I'm probably going to lean on this week over Wyndham.
Well, I got to ask you then, are you going to start with your first pick in the 7K range?
I really could. I mean, there's so many guys I like this week. I don't love the top of the board this week, honestly, guys. I don't know if it's because we kind of got that PGA looming next week. And because this is a shorter course, I think it sets up well. It kind of brings more guys into play. So I will go low. I'll start with maybe my favorite guy in the 7K range. I'll take Brian Harman. We talk about a recent form guy, short course specialist. This golf course is very manageable for him. We've seen him play tough golf course as well. So if this is a challenge, I think Brian Harman's up to it. Not really sexy player, but I like the form. I like his grid, and I like the fit on this golf course, and I love the price. So I'm going to go ahead and take my favorite value guy with my first pick.
I like that pick. And to your point, you're right. Not a sexy pick and was, a little bit of a boring name in Bermuda, which probably keeps his ownership low, but had 2 top 5s in his last 3 outings. So he certainly form is there and rising, and does feel like, the week before a major feels like a week where Brian Harman rises and gets you another really good finish. So I'm with you. I think that's a really good value snag there at the 2 spot. Spence, I'd love to hear from you. Is Brian Harmon on your radar for this week?
Yeah, there are 5 golfers for me that are sub 10% ownership in that $7,000 range that are presenting as a value in every iteration of how I ran my model. So that's against DraftKings price. So it's a price tag that's too cheap. It's against ownership, naturally less than 10% there. If he's inside the top 20, my model's going to like him. But of all the names in that $7,000 range, he would technically be the third best value that I had. Wyndham Clark is number 1 for me. There is a name a little bit above Harmon, but Harmon is a very interesting play in this tournament. Like if you think classic US Open type venues, and I don't know if this is exactly how it's going to play, Harmon has found success in the past at very similar sort of setups. And I think this is a very nice spot for him. He's a top 15 win equity player in my model. I think he's one of the better values on the board and was somebody that I honestly was going to hope to round out this lineup with at some point. So I think that's a lot of value that Joe got there at the 102.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of weeks, like Joel and I were talking before we came on. I think there's a lot of weeks where you are kind of forced to build from top down. Like last week, you're building around Scotty. You're kind of locking him in and building around. I think this is actually a salary scale that lets us kind of build from the bottom up. Like find the value guys we like, see what we got left to work with, and take some shots with the big boys.
I agree. And another also is, Joe, while I like the big boys and you'll take one of them, none of them stand out this week, right? There's a bunch of guys that are kind of similar. So I want to go grab my value guys early, and then whichever kind of big guy kind of falls to me in a draft like this, I'll be happy with, because I feel like they're all kind of similar. So I think it's almost more important to get the value right in this week. And the big guys, one of those guys will succeed. I'm going to start here. I'm pleased. I mean, listen, it's no surprise who my first pick is. I am not going to get away from Andrew Novak this week. The way he's playing has been spectacular. The fact, they got him up in the high 7K ranges instead of the low, which, is better. I still think he should be in the high 8Ks, but the way he's been playing. I mean, in his last 2 outings, at the Valero, he was third. At the RBC, he was second. That doesn't even count the fact that he won the Zurich. And now it's a team event. He doesn't get all the credit for that. But he is red hot. And if you look at his actual form, he's gaining strokes on approach, off the tee, around the green. And the big kicker for Andrew Novak is the putter. He's not traditionally a great putter, but he's gaining strokes putting. If he's found something with that putter, to me, he's one of the best golfers out there right now. I would play him in almost 9K. So at 7,800, he's way underpriced in my book. Now, is that going to come with ownership? Probably. I don't have a number on my site. Spence, what ownership number are you seeing right now on Novak?
I haven't updated it in a couple hours, so I would preface it by saying that, but I see 8.55% right now.
That seems low. So if that's all it's going to be, if it's under 10, I'd be more than happy to stick with Novak here at a 7,800 price tag. So I love Novak this week. I love Novak every week, but he's certainly coming through. So I love that pick. Audience, you're on the clock. Some nominations are already coming in. We need you to double those picks. While we wait for those picks to get confirmed, Joe, I want to go to you. Is Andrew Novak on your radar this week?
Yeah, I love Novak, man. Actually wrote him up in my core 4 a couple weeks ago at Zurich. Him and his partner, I had them in my core 4. Every year we kind of see those guys emerge, right, Joel? I mean, there's a handful of guys at the first year that kind of start out hot. We start playing them, we start kind of following them, we start kind of liking them. And Andrew Novak certainly fits that bill this week. So yeah, man, I think he's a very talented guy. I wouldn't chalk it up to just a hot run. I mean, obviously he's playing his best golf, but the guy's also super talented. Gets kind of a little bit of weight off his shoulders with that win at Zurich. It's not as high profile, as like the win at when he was in the playoff at Heritage would have been, but still 2-year exemption. So you got to feel like he's playing freely this week. So really like his upside.
Boom. All right. Endorsed. I love it. Audience, great job nailing the first pick. Daniel Berger. Then I'll be honest with you, Berger I was considering with my first pick too. Novak won out.
Love that pick.
I'm with you. I was considering Berger there too. So I think that's a great pick by the audience. Audience, we need one more. So you got a few nominations in. Joe, you already started to say it. You love the Berger pick. So was Berger on your radar maybe with your number 2?
Yeah, he was on my radar with my number 1. I was very seriously considering him. Another guy that kind of right in line with Brian Harmon. That's kind of the team I'm looking to build this week. Just really good recent form. A guy that plays well on shorter golf courses. We don't have to worry about his lack of length this week. And he can just kind of handle himself in every aspect. So I love that pick by the audience. Also got a very reasonable $8,800 price tag. So love Burger here.
Boom. And the second pick is his audience. Great job tonight getting your picks in. Like I always say, audience, you guys are the real MVP of this show. We appreciate you. Victor Hovland. Now, this one's interesting because while I think Victor Hovland has some upside, he's playing well. I have some concerns about his scrambling here and how that might affect him, if that might hold him back. While I certainly think he can do it well, I think he could struggle around the greens. I wonder if that would prevent you from taking him. Spencer, I'll go to you on this one. Are you interested in Victor Hovland this week?
I've given this answer in the past about Hovland. The around the green game is always going to be a concern. That's certainly something that comes into play quite frequently. But I feel like when you put him at some of these tests where there's thicker rough around the green, which it looks to be a lot of that, and even there's a million bunkers. Like that's an exaggeration, obviously, but it's not that much of an exaggeration. There are bunkers looming everywhere. If you look at just scrambling from out of bunkers, Hovland grades inside the top 25 of my model. And then if you look at his ability to scramble around the greens when the rough gets thicker, it doesn't reach a level that all of a sudden Victor Hovland is Hideki Matsuyama with his short game, but there is an uptick that ends up occurring for him. So, we talked about this at the beginning. I think there's a lot of different routes that we can take. I kind of feel, whether this ends up being right or wrong, that we're all in a similar mindset to where you don't necessarily have to start these roster constructions at the very, very top when we're trying to do these types of tests here. And, Berger and Hovland are two top 12 players in my model, to where you have a lot of salary left. It's a very simple build to work around those two. I like both of the picks and how the audience started their team.
Boom. All right, there you go. Audience picks endorsed. Great round by the audience. Coming back to me here with my number 2, I'm sticking with what I said at the beginning. I'm going to stick with the value at the start of the draft here. I'm not going to go to the top yet. There's another value player I'm going to take who we've seen be very streaky. He goes on runs where he's been excellent. He looks like one of the better players on tour. He goes on runs where he disappears and he's unplayable. He is now entrenched in a run where he is becoming one of the better players again. And we lost him for a while, but he is back now, and that's Eric Cole. Eric Cole, his ball striking has been fantastic as of recent. His price is right at only $6,700. I'm also seeing an extremely low ownership, which I'm pretty surprised by. If he comes in at sub 5% owned, I love Eric Cole, especially with his ability he can play well around the greens. He can spike with a putter. If he finds a hot putter and strikes the ball well this week, I think he gets you another top 15 or 20, which at $6,700, it certainly could be in winning lineup. So I love the value get on Cole this week. Joe, I'd love to go to you. Are you interested in Eric Cole?
Yeah, at 6,700, he really sticks out. We haven't seen him perform as well as we'd like, but things have picked up recently. So we know that he's capable of going on like these tremendous heaters. As you mentioned, we've seen it from him before. So he's obviously finding his groove, and at 6,700 in a no-cut event, you got to like the upside there. So I really like that pick.
Boom. I love it. All right. Joe, you got your second pick here, Harmon off the board. Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, Burger's gone, which is kind of frustrating. So I'm gonna go to my next, kind of keeping with the very vanilla theme of my team this week. I'm gonna go with Russell Henley at 94. Just a good old standby tee to green beast. We've seen him play well in the Northeast. We've seen him play well in U.S. Opens. We know that he can handle pretty much any type of golf course that's thrown his way. And I like grabbing him, kind of that next tier below the top guys. So I'll lock in Russell. Feel good with him every week.
I like Russell as well. I think he's having one of his better seasons. His form has been really good. And like you said, I think he's playing as well as anybody. You get him a few $100s cheaper in the 9K range. So I like the value there. Spence, you got 2 here. But before you go, I'd love to get your take on both Henley and Cole.
Yeah, I like both picks a lot that you guys just made. Specifically with Henley, like you guys talked a lot about Cole. It's the standard every week thing that we've experienced for what feels like a season and a half now, to where no matter what kind of production he puts together, we cannot get him any higher in price tag. And it just naturally puts together this value play in the $6,000 range. But I really love how Joe has started his lineup with Harman and Henley. Those are two guys I was hoping to get at some part of this draft. Henley's a top 5 projected weighted scorer for me. He's top 5 with his short iron play. A lot to like with Russell Henley there. But with Russell Henley now being off the board, I am going to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench in this for everybody. I don't know how much it's going to do. And I see you nodding your head, Joel, and I don't think it's with who you believe I'm going to say. It's going to be in the same vein of what I'm doing, but I am going to go near the top with both picks here, but I'm not going to the very top. I'm going to take Xander Schauffele, and I'm going to take Justin Thomas. Those are two players that inside of my model, I've talked a lot throughout different parts of the show about the potential that off the tee acumen gets slightly marginalized compared to what it normally would be. And if that's the case of the high-end golfers, those are the two names that see the biggest shift in potential. Xander's off the tee game has been off since coming back. With that being said, the iron play remains good. We've seen him pop for over 10 strokes in one of those starts. The pitch and putt narrative, there's a little bit to question there, but like even the recent iron play from him, high-end marks, same thing with Justin Thomas. I'm going to shoot for the upside on those two, make it very simple here, kind of just lump them together as my two picks, and it will now make it in a 72-man field, if nothing else, at least a little bit more difficult for everybody to have to go through because it takes off 2 of the $10,000 plus players from the board.
Interesting. I think the question is, Xander seems like he's really coming around. We know at some point Xander is going to be playing at one of the top players in the world. It looks like that's starting to come to fruition. You kind of want to get him now before. I mean, he's already at the 10K range, but he'll probably be bumped up to 10.8. Get him at 10.2. I like both picks here. I think they're both at the top of the board. And like I said earlier, I think there's probably 5 guys at the top of the board I really like, but those are definitely 2 of the 5. So those are guys I would have been targeting as well. Joe, I'd love to hear from you. Are Xander and Justin Thomas 2 guys you're on, or would you fade either one?
Yeah, I like them both. I'm a little bit shook by Spencer just coming out blazing with the big guns there. I would probably lean JT just because I think I'm more interested in Xander next week, which I'm obviously interested in JT next week as well. But I feel like Xander's still kind of building himself back. I think maybe he's even kind of planning his schedule around that major next week. So he'll probably be trying to peak then. But I always love Xander on any type of golf course. And JT was probably going to be my next pick if Spencer doesn't take him there, honestly. He's kind of an old school player. One of the guys that still hits all the shots. I think he'll fare very well on kind of this classical style layout. He's got all the shots to win again. And we've seen him go on these heaters where he's, won back-to-back and ripped off, 2 or 3 wins in 6 or 8 starts. So he's fully capable of taking this down. Love that pick.
Boom. All right. Picks endorsed. Joe, you're up with your third, about 8,200 per pick left. Who are you following up here after Harman and Henley?
Yeah, like I said, I really like JT. I was planning on kind of going to the top of the board, but he was the guy I had circled up there. There's another player that I feel is really solid. I'm going to kind of hang out and see if maybe he falls to me later. So I'm just going to kind of stick with my game plan, which is solid, consistent, veteran guys. I'm going to take Keegan Bradley at 8,100. He's a Northeast guy. We've seen him win at Aronimink Golf Course, which is in this area. Trying to play his way onto the Ryder Cup signature event. So a lot of points at stake here. Obviously, the ball striking we know is phenomenal. We've seen him play well this year in Flash. So just kind of like the whole setup for Keegan this week, and I like that price.
Boom. All right, Keegan up the board. I think Keegan, other than the fact that he might be a little popular this week, I think Keegan's a great pick. I think a lot of people are on him for good reason. 8,100. I think he certainly possesses the upside to go out and win the tournament. and the price is right, you can get him at a little bit of a discount. So I'm with you on that. Spence, what about you? Are you going to be playing Keegan Bradley this week?
I don't know. I don't have a strong take one way or another. I think Joe laid out all the points to play him, and anytime you put him on one of these Northeast venues, it seems to be where the vintage Keegan continues to come out. So I think there's a logical reason why everybody is playing him this week. We're not also, like, we've talked a lot about percentages. There's a 72-man field. We have not reached some astronomical territory of the percentage that at least I'm seeing right now. It's 13, 14%. That's very, very manageable. So I'd like to see where that ownership trends over the next handful of days here before we tee off on Thursday. But, I think he's a good play at a fair price with an ownership that probably makes a lot of sense.
All right. Off the board. There you have it. All right. I got a few guys I am weighing here. I'm a little bit, oh man, I'm all over the place, but I'm going to just stick with this pick. I'm going to go with another value play, and I'll get back to the top of the board later. I'm going to take a guy, and I normally don't do this, but I'm going to take a guy whose best strength right now is his putter. It's a hot putter, a value play. That's Tom Hoge. He's gained over 2 strokes putting in 5 straight weeks, which is wild. And if he can consistently hit putts like that, we've seen him spike with that ball striking where he's gained almost 10 strokes at the Players. He gained 7 strokes at the Masters. If he just gains 2 or 3 strokes and goes, 2 or 3 strokes gained putting, he's going to get to another really good result. His recent form is outstanding. If you look at dating back to the Players, which was in mid-March, 3rd, 5th, 14th, 18th, that's straight top 20s in every outing and 2 top 10. So he's certainly playing really well. I think the one thing with this pick, it's a little bit contradicting what I said earlier with Victor Hovland in that, he struggles a bit around the greens. And so I'm taking a guy who struggles around the greens, but I think he's doing enough with the rest of his game so well that he can make up for it. So as a value play, I think he's pretty underpriced. I think he's going to be pretty popular. So it's going to come with some ownership, but I don't have too many over-owned players on the rest of my lineup, so I can afford it at 6,700. Audience, you're up, and you got 2, so get those nominations in. Again, we need 2 picks, so we'll let those flow. But while we wait, Joe, I want to go to you. Is Tom Hoge on your radar this week?
Yeah, man, I love Tom Hoge. I'm always interested, and I'm, at 6,700, I think he is. Yep. I'm not super concerned about around the green stuff. If he's hitting it on the green, he doesn't have to chip. So, you're hoping he's playing well. If you're putting him in your lineup, you're obviously, you're just looking for a spot ball striking week and that the putting goes well. And as you mentioned, his recent form is phenomenal. And those are all big boy events too. We're not talking about opposite field stuff. We're talking about Players, Masters, signature events. So, probably underpriced on this slate, in my opinion, to be below 7K.
Boom. I love it. All right. Audience, you got a few nominations in. I don't think any of them has been doubled yet. I know we got a bunch of nominations.
I think we have 2 roses at this point.
Oh, don't do it to me, audience.
Is that a steal? We got
a
steal. I love it. Go ahead, Joe. Tell me why you like Justin Rose this week.
Oh man, as you can kind of see from my lineup, I just like these veteran, experienced guys this week. So Rose was definitely one that I had circled that I was going to kind of grab at the tail end of this thing. You mentioned Hoge. We talked about Brian Harman, guys with recent form that have been around the block a time or two, and Rose has played well in the Northeast. Won his U.S. Open at Marion. So there's a lot of things going in his favor. I think he's got like 3 top 10s in the last 7, and those top 10s have been at the Masters and 2 signature events. So this guy comes to play when it's important, and I like him on this classical layout.
Oh, all right.
I couldn't believe it, man. I looked at earlier today. I had to double check. Justin Rose is 14th in the world, which is amazing.
Really?
I think the dude's like 44 years old. We saw him be number 1, a decade ago or whatever it was, and he's back up to 14th in the world, which kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, that is a little surprising, but he has strung together a few really good weeks this year. So he's playing good golf. Not a lot of guys get you multiple top 10s, and he's certainly doing that right now. So Justin Rose sneaking by, but maybe not so sneaky anymore. Audience, we still need one more. A ton of nominations. We just need one of these picks to be seconded to lock it in while we wait for that final pick. Courtney, Hank, Andrew. Oh, there it is. Cantlay locked in. Patrick Cantlay. A little bit surprised on that. I know there's some other guys at the top that I would have leaned on before Cantlay. But Cantlay's a good player. So I'd love to hear from you on that one, Spence. Is Cantlay on your radar this week?
A lot of ownership around Cantlay. I have nothing negative to say outside of that ownership answer. I think he's a top 8 player in this tournament. I think it's a fair price tag with it. I also kind of like Cantlay. We talk about some of these. We always think of Cantlay in California, but I like the way that he grades on some of these Northeast courses inside of my model. So I think he's certainly somebody to consider. The question just comes down to ownership at the end of the day. And in a 72-man field, how you can create leverage in a lineup. And I think it's still easy enough to do it. That's one of the things is even when we have a no-cut 72-man field, unless we're talking about tournament sizes where there's tens of thousands of people, leverage is often over-discussed in a lot of these spots. Like we do it on this show because it is still very important, but at the end of the day, you still want to play who you think the value players are and the best names in the tournament. And typically it only takes 1 or 2 spots to get a little bit unique and different to work up the field in a lot of these tournaments, unless we're talking about millionaire makers and things of that nature. So, I don't think a 22% Cantlay is all of a sudden out of the game because of that. I would just say be cognizant of how you build it from there. But I do like the Cantlay pick.
Ooh, all right. Lock it in. Patrick Cantlay. Nice pick by team audience. All right, here. I'm going to go with the boring one. It's gotten back to me. Some of the top names have gotten off the board. I'm just going to take the best golf I can. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and take Rory McIlroy. Spencer knew it before I even said it. At this point, take the best player in the world in the 4th round, seems like a safe enough play. I also, because I've gotten so much value in my first 3 picks, I can afford it, and I can still round out my lineup and feel good about it. So I think to the point that I made earlier, when you start looking at guys like, Xander, Justin Thomas, Rory, even, I'll put Cantlay in that, Hovland, you could even put Henley in there. All those guys to me are in it's very similar tier. So it's almost like pick your poison, right? I don't think one guy is super aggressively higher than the rest. So almost by saying that, you're probably looking at me like, so then why would you take the most expensive? Because, well, 1, because the other guys are all gone, but 2, because he is, right now he's technically the best player in the world. I know he has just as much upside as anyone else. I didn't want to go another round where he possibly could be gone, and then I would kind of lose any of the top of the board. So as my big gun, I think Rory is certainly a safe play. I think he gets you a top 10 with obviously upside to go out and win the tournament. Obviously, we don't need to say much about where we all know he's really good at golf, right? We saw what he did at the Masters and all that. So I'll go back to you, Joe. Is there any reason you wouldn't play Rory or Patrick Cantlay this week?
Yeah, I hate Rory, man. Terrible pick. Awful, awful player. You reached on him, taking him in the 4th round. No, he's amazing, dude. He's a great player. There again, I think more just from a narrative point of view, is he doing the thing where he's like looking ahead, where he's dominated at Quail Hollow? Is he looking ahead to next week? He's been making the rounds like doing the media tour in New York. So, is he viewing this as a warm up type of thing? Or is he taking it seriously? So, yeah, I think it's great, especially in tournaments. You've got just unbelievable upside. So gotta love Rory. Cantlay, kind of same thing. He kind of falls in that JT Russell Henley type, area for me. A lot of guys that I really respect are talking about Cantlay this week. So, he's got that kind of Northeast thing going too. Won at Caves Valley a few years ago. We've seen him play well, in this area, this part of the country, play well on bent. So he's not really doing things great this year, not doing things horribly, just kind of steady, which could play well on this golf course, fairways and greens type stuff. So I like both those picks.
Can I very quickly, Joel, just give – I don't even want to call it the anti-Rory take. I would just like to throw out something that my model found, and it doesn't mean that Rory doesn't go out and win, because in a very similar spot. I've talked about Pebble Beach a lot for why I like the name like Wyndham Clark. And, my model didn't necessarily love Rory that week this year, and he went out and won the tournament. So, a lot of these things with the form that Rory's in, we might be able to overlook it. But the one negative that I would say, if we are trying to find a reason, he's going to be about 40% owned. So there's going to be a lot of popularity around it. I've said numerous times that I believe in it's a guessing game. And Joe said this, we're taking educated guesses at this point. But if off the tee gets neutralized at all, he loses one of his big weapons there. And then the other thing that does come into play is if short iron proximity is where most of these buckets are going to take place. We'll call it from 150 and in, but I even have it from 125 and in being really the spot you want to look at. Rory loses a lot of his proximity advantage within that range. Like I said, did not matter at Pebble Beach. We will see if it matters here, but I just know that he's very, very popular. I don't think that's a reason to avoid playing him, but there are more negatives in the profile than what we saw last week with Scottie Scheffler. I know the price tag is a little bit different, but like Scheffler put an historic production in my model. I've never had somebody grade as highly as he did. It was a 2.5, 3-to-1 price. You're not paying the same price, and it's not a $13,000 price tag. But there are a little more red flags if you start trying to find them on Rory's profile. So just something to throw out there that I kind of found interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree, Spencer. I totally agree with that. His biggest weapon, biggest advantage is the driver. We don't know that he's going to really be able to unleash that this week. And while his wedges have been much better this year, that's still what, if you were picking nits at his game, you'd probably call out his wedge play. So 100% with you on Rory.
All right, there you have it. Joe, you're up with your fourth 8,300 to spend. You got Keegan with your last. Who are you taking here?
I'm just going to try to keep hitting them down the middle, guys. I'm going to go Corey Connors. Ball striker extraordinaire. We've seen that form kind of start bubbling up here over the past, 4 to 6 weeks. We've seen some really nice finishes out of Corey. We know what he's good at. He's one of the best iron players on the PGA Tour. That after a little bit of a sluggish start, that's finally come around. I mean, he's ran off four top tens in his last 6 starts. And on a golf course, I'm really not sure. We kind of know what to expect, but we're not 100%. I'll take a great ball striker. So give me Corey Connors. He'll be popular this week. I'm aware of that, but at 8,800, I really like kind of the stability that I think he'll bring.
Yeah, and you nailed it. It's the stability. I mean, he's pretty consistent everywhere right now. He's just playing good all around golf. I think he's a really good pick in this spot, especially under 9K. I think there's a value there with Corey Connors. So I really like that pick. Spence, you got 2 here, but I'd love to get your take on Corey Connors as well first.
Yeah, I mean, high GIR rate from Connors. A lot of the metrics that you want to look at, and I keep talking about the negatives of the off the tee play, but one of the things that you do need to at least incorporate into your game, if you are not the longest player on tour, is you need to avoid these bunkers off the tee. Connors does that at a higher rate than most players on tour. So it does feel like he could position himself in one of those spots where find a lot of fairways, dominate with the iron play. Can he make enough putts to actually work himself up the leaderboard? That is the common Corey Connors question that will have to be answered, but don't have a problem with the play. I think it's a very reasonable price tag there. And, as I move into my next pick, Joel, I gave all the reasons of why Rory could potentially be a bad play. And now I'm going to probably give what's arguably been, I'm going to be very generous with myself here, and I'm going to call it the most boom or bust play on the board. I think a lot of people may say that this is one of the worst selections that has been made on the board, but I'm swinging for the fence here with Tony Finau at $7,400. I think this price tag is too cheap. I've talked about pitch and putt quite frequently. We've seen that narrative with the putter. Just like nobody's ever going to look at Tony Finau and go, well, that's a really good putter that's going to make putts. But he did make putts the last start at the RBC Heritage. He also had one of the biggest increases that I could find in my model when you looked at these fast bent grass surfaces that have these firm conditions to it. So, if Finau can find something with the putter, there is a lot to like about his game, and I've quite frequently said over the last year or two, we used to view Finau as one of these golfers where it was just bomb and gouge, hit it as far as it could be. And from a statistical perspective, my model does not think that that's where he finds his most success. It's usually at these tournaments where it's either one, a shorter venue, or two, it's a spot where you can club down. And there's a lot of club down spots at this course. So, I think if Finau can make some putts, and it's going to go right into that Connor sort of an answer, it comes down to the putter. If he doesn't make putts and he loses 7 strokes putting, it's a different answer to be had. But I'm going to shoot for the upside with him. And then I'm also going to take, and there's a lot of names that I would have loved to have considered here. Like, Brian Harman would be somebody that I would have loved to fit into a build if I could have fit this differently. I think Eric Cole was another name that I would have loved to have had, but I'm going to take a $7,800 golfer here in Denny McCarthy. I think that McCarthy is kind of falling victim in the space right now to this narrative of distance being the biggest thing that's needed for this course. I've kind of laid out all the reasons already why I don't think that's the case. And McCarthy's game, if you get rid of that distance narrative, is one of the higher upside metrics that I could find. So I really like McCarthy. I definitely like him more than the betting market. I definitely like him more than the head-to-head market. And it seems like I like him more than the projections that I'm seeing for ownership. I have him currently at about 8%, which is very, very low for what I thought he was going to be when this week started.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting call. I mean, we saw Denny McCarthy spike, earlier in the year. He had a few really good runs. And you're right, I just feel like people have gone a little bit quiet on him, but he can get really high with that putter. He strikes the ball well. I think he certainly has top 20 or top 15 upside. So I like that pick there. How about you, Joe? Are you interested in playing Tony Finau or Denny McCarthy?
Yeah, I really like Denny. He was on my radar for sure. We've seen some good things from him this year. We know what that putter can do. So I'm with Spence on Denny. I'm not as in step with Spence on Tony. I get it. I mean, I get where Spencer's going. The pedigree's definitely there. The upside's definitely there, especially at that price tag. I just don't know what Tony's doing great right now. Like, I guess you could argue he's driving the ball really well. He's gaining strokes off the tee at least, but I don't think I can get to Tony this week. But at 7,400, I mean, I totally get where Spencer's coming from. Really understandable when you see a player of his caliber down there. We know he's capable of putting together a win, capable of beating big fields. So I get it. I'd probably, if between the two, I'd probably prefer Denny.
All right, there you have it. Joe, you got 2 left here. You took Corey Connors with your last week. You still have a good amount of money to spend. Who are you taking with your 5th?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you can go. And I want to try to leave myself some flexibility. But I don't think there's really need to get nuts. Joel's got a couple of my top sub 7K guys already on his roster in Hoagie and Cole. So that kind of took the wind out of those sails. So I'll just kind of keep trucking along. I'm going to go Shane Lowry. I just like I like the profile of him on this golf course where, there's some talk that we could get some kind of wet weather over the weekend. If that's the case, I always like Shane in those conditions. We've seen some really high-level iron play from him this year. The Opens in Portrush later this year, and that's kind of a narrative, but it's something I feel like Shane's been gearing up for that to defend his Open title there. Obviously won it last time it was in Portrush, and we've seen him playing really well this year. So I'll go with Shane at 8,500.
That's really interesting. I thought I was going to get him here. I didn't think you were going to take him. I was pretty sold. I was going to have Lowry. So a steal. Nice pick. I like Lowry here too. I thought he was just underpriced. I think he's been playing well. He's gotten you a bunch of top 15s and 10s this year. I think he can do that again this week at only 8,500. So I really like that pick. How about you, Spence? Are you on Shane Lowry at all this week?
So when Jason Day was in this field, shameless plug to be able to talk about Jason Day for a second, but when Jason Day was in this field, 3 golfers for me graded inside of the top 30 of every single metric that I ran. Day was one of them. Remove him from the field. Now there's 2 choices. Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry. So I think Shane Lowry is a very enticing pick when you look at that. Also, I want to say this about Joe's lineup. you throw, and I know we can't do that now, you throw Justin Rose on the end of that lineup. I'm not so sure I've ever seen a lineup that looks more like 6 guys belong in a lineup together
Yeah, baby.
than those 6 guys.
Yeah, Jay Rose was going to be my closer, but the audience had to ruin it.
Well, Joe, a lot of pressure on you now to make sure you get the look of your last pick right for this roster, because it does have a very solid theme to it.
I've got a guy I really want down there, so hopefully he gets back to me.
All right. Well, we'll see. We got 7,700, so the audience will be competing with some similar golfers in that range, so we will see. With my first pick here, I'm going to take Mav McNeely. And I'm going to go with the guy who's just been playing really well. I think he's still even underpriced for what we've seen from him. He's got 2 top 5s in his last 3 tries, 32nd at the Masters. We know he can get hot with that putter. He's solid around the green. He's been really good off the tee. The one thing that hasn't been as consistent is his ball striking. If he gains strokes, ball striking on approach, I think he's going to get you another top 10 or 15 this week. I think he's a really good result. I think he's playing better than the credit he gets on how he's being priced in the market. So I'm going to take the upside here with Mav McNeely. Audience, you got 2. Matt Burton, welcome to the draft. Brian, we appreciate you guys. Let's get those nominations in. You guys got your final 2 picks. You got $7,600 to spend. And what's interesting is you have a similar range as Joe. So there might be another steal as for the last pick. And it looks like, oh no, M.A. Jacob Bridgman, you can't nominate twice. That is just one nomination, but another one comes in. That will be finalized. While we wait for those picks to come in and those nominations, Joe, I'll go back to you. Are you interested at all in Mav McNeely this week?
Yeah, I've been kind of interested in Mav all year. He's a guy that I've been well aware of for a long time. I mean, dating back to his Stanford days, and I think it's pretty fair to say his pro career had been underwhelming up until the last couple of years, and a lot of things have started coming together for him. He's always been a really great putter, but he's picked up some speed, and that's made a huge difference. So I really am happy, for lack of a better word, happy for Mav that he's been able to kind of hang tough at the pro level and reach where he is now, which is kind of a borderline, maybe even in the top 10 now in the world. So yeah, for sure interested in Mav. Love his game, and he's gonna break a big win off at some point. We've seen him kind of chip away. Got that win at the RSM, I believe. So he got that monkey off his back, and he's gonna pull down a big tournament here soon.
Hopefully this week. So I am with you on that. Matt Best on the show. Drew, you know why he was Drew, because you're his doppelganger. You look just like you. May be you, actually. You may have withdrawn from the tournament, but he will be missed this week. I know Spencer is definitely upset.
If that were the case, Matt, Jason Day would withdraw every week because Spencer's taking every week.
All right, so it looks like the first pick is off the board. Siwoo Kim, lock it in, Siwoo. And then we'll need one more audience. So Bridgman's nominated, Minwoo. Who will your final pick be? I don't think you can afford Minwoo. So you got to be someone you can actually afford here at 7,600. While we wait for that final nomination to come in, Phil Lower in the chat. I wonder, do you think there's any relation to Justin? Is a brother named Justin? Are you playing on tour? Questions for you, Phil. But also, thanks for nominating Minwoo. And make another pick. Get another nomination in. We want to get that last pick finalized. While we wait, we'll go back to you on this one, Joe. Are you interested in Siwoo Kim this week?
I haven't given Siwoo a lot of thought, honestly, this week. I kind of looked him over pretty well last week. Hadn't looked at Siwoo too hard. We know that he's a streaky player, so when he gets things going, like we've seen the last few weeks at Harbor Town. Last week at the CJ Cup, he gained almost 7 strokes on approach last week. The iron play was really, really strong. We saw him there, honestly, in the hunt at Harbor Town before kind of a bad final round took him out of kind of the top end of that thing. But the more you look at Siwoo, the more I could kind of talk myself into him with the form he's shown in the last few weeks.
I think I'm with you on that. The more I look at him, the more I'm like, okay, I can see it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't on him at first. So I agree with that. The final pick is in. Great job, Brian for finalizing Andrew in the last pick. JT Poston off the board. Good value play there at 7,200. The audience squad is finalized. I think the audience is a really interesting squad here. Spence, I'd love to hear from you. Are you interested in JT Poston? What do you think of the audience's final squad?
I like their build. JT Poston's one of the better values that I have in general in the $7,000 range. There were a handful of guys that I was talking about that are going to be a value for me there. He is one of them, top 25 of my model, and really all the key areas that I was trying to find, he's 19th for me when you take overall bunker play. So that took it from all three levels. That was off the tee avoidance into bunkers. That was GIR percentage out of fairway bunkers, and that was scrambling from the sand. So I've talked about all the bunkers that you have out here. Poston excels in all those areas. Really like him at these shorter tests that I keep calling a pitch and putt also. Always seems to pop for me in similar contests, and the form has been very respectable over the last couple of months. It just seems like what we have lacked from him is that extreme high-end result, and maybe this is the exact sort of a tournament where we can get that top 10 sort of a finish.
All right. Boom. Great draft team audience. All right. For me, to finalize my squad, I was going to go with Lowry. Now he's gone. I'm going to take Sungjae in. And I like the Sungjae in pick. I'm happy with it here. The one concern with Sungjae is the ball striking has been pretty bad on approach. And it's been bad since March. I mean, he hasn't gained strokes on approach in 6 straight tournaments. But everything else is working. I mean, he's gained strokes with his driver at every tournament in 2025. He's been pretty good with the putter. He's been excellent around the green since March. So if he can give us anything on approach, I think there's really some upside here with Sungjae. Certainly top 15, top 20 upside, especially the last few tournaments since April and the Masters on. He's given you a 5th, 11th, and 33rd. So if he makes some putts and just gets just a little bit on the ball striking, the upside is there for Sungjae. And at 8,400, I think the price is right. So I'm okay with kind of landing on Sungjae here with my last pick. I'm pretty happy about that. Joe, I'd love to hear from you. Is Sungjae on your radar? And then you got your last pick.
I've been a little bit off Sungjae this year, Joe. You mentioned the ball striking. It's just concerning. I mean, I'm never gonna like argue with having Sungjae in the lineup just because he's a quality player, especially at this price point. And as you mentioned, it's one of those things like, hey, if the ball striking does show up this week, he's doing everything else really well. So, there's potential for a spike. It's kind of the reverse of what we look with bad putters, right? We kind of know they're going to be good from tee to green and hope the putter shows up. So with Sungjae's case, we're just hoping the irons show up. And he's certainly capable of doing that. He's a talented guy, and he's going to shake out of that funk eventually. So I don't hate the play there.
All right. I love it. With your last pick, you got 7,700 to go. Did the guy you wanted get to you?
I got my guy.
All right.
I don't know that I've ever been like this excited to fist pump Aaron Rye into a lineup, but we're going to put Aaron Rye in there at 7,700. I don't know if we can make any putts this week, but we're gonna have plenty of looks. And Rye's just another one of those guys, really solid ball striker, a guy I want like on a shorter golf course like this is where I want to try to play him. I feel like that's where he can kind of do his most damage, and the ball striking can get really, really hot. Just hoping the putter kind of shows up. But I like what he's doing. The greens and regulations gained are right up there, near the top of this field. So with my guy there, I don't want to spoil Spence's pick, but there's some other guys I liked. Poston, I would have taken a kind of a dart throw on if I didn't have any other options. I like him on short golf courses as well. And a dude that just kind of keeps on popping up. It maybe doesn't show up like in his final results, but Keith Mitchell has been just all over leaderboards this year. Just hadn't been able to put 4 rounds together. So he's another guy that I was looking at there.
Interesting. Good pick. Aaron Rye. I'm actually surprised he lasted there to the last one. I like that pick. Spence, I'd love to hear from you. Are you interested in Aaron Rye? And then you got your last here as well.
In a weird way, the Aaron Rye pick might even be more of a fit into what Joe has done than a Justin Rose would have been. Like maybe old school Rose would have fit better, but like outside of Henley, who's become a very good putter this season inside of my model, This is kind of the ball striking, shorter off the tee, most of names that Joe has there. So I think from a roster construction standpoint, it's about as on par with each player that you can find there. So if you're just trying to find similar traits, Joe has done a very good job of that. When I give this final pick here, and I'm going to keep it simple because I would have loved Eric Cole. I've said that multiple times, but with Eric Cole gone, it put me into a spot here to where it was probably going to, in reality, be one of three names. Bezadenhout was interesting for me at 6,300. Not going to go that direction. I wanted to just for the sake of this show because nobody's going to talk about him, and it's probably rightfully so. I really wanted to come on and give a sales pitch of why Nick Dunlap was a good play at $6,000 after losing 10 strokes off the tee in every single tournament, it feels like, for the last 2 months. But that is way too bold.
I think I know where Spencer's going here.
I'm going to take a golfer at $6,000. Is that the range it was? Cameron Davis?
Aussie. I knew you were going Cam Davis.
Yeah, so I talked about this a lot with Finau. It's finding a certain profile, a profile of a golfer that is going to see more upside on a similar course like this. It's one of the things I do every single week, to where I do my course projections and I compare it to the baseline statistics elsewhere. And Cameron Davis, in two specific categories, ended up being one of the highest climbers that I had in my model. Joe writes the article over at Rotoball, or Horse for the Course. We don't have history at this venue, but I feel like if we had enough tournaments that would have been played here, Davis kind of has that feeling of a golfer that would be a golfer that would find success here. It's the club down tournament. It's the upside that he experiences on similar green complexes with the putter. That's one of the categories that he makes the big jump in. It's also that pitch and putt narrative of his potential to just get extremely hot. And he's going to have to make putts, and we'll see if he ends up doing that. And I don't love having him and Finau in the same lineup together because that is asking for a big thing from each one of them. But look, I mean, this lineup is different. There's a lot of money left on the table. There's a lot of ownership decreases. Finau's sub 5%. Nobody wants to play him. Cameron Davis is sub 4%. It seems like he's getting a little bit of steam over the last, 10 hours or so, but we're still sub 5%. This is just my boom or bust lineup in a 72-man field that I'm going to swing for the fences and see what ends up occurring from it.
Boom. I love it. Cameron Davis. But listen, at a minimum price, I like the swing there. We certainly know there's some upside there with Cam Davis. I like the look of your squad. That's a wrap for this draft. Don't forget, smash the like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. Before we wrap up tonight, I do have a few questions, but there's an interesting post here from Matt Burton, which I want to get both of your take on it. The caddy situation. Spence, we'll start with you. Do you think the caddy movement will have any effect or play, or even play into the narrative of success for Morikawa, who interestingly was not drafted tonight?
I don't know. These questions are always difficult to answer because it's player dependent, and you never know how somebody's going to react to it. But I mean, it certainly can't hurt to know that the guy that's entering your bag is somebody who just won the last time that he was on somebody's bag. So I don't know. It's something to keep in mind, I guess. I don't love Morikawa for this tournament, and it's not because of anything to do with the caddy situation. It kind of just goes back to the original conversation that we had at the top, to where, for me, of the $10,000 plus players, I like taking my chances with Justin Thomas or obviously I did both here, or Xander Schauffele. So that just makes me a little bit lighter on what Morikawa and Rory ends up being. But, I will give this take. I think of the four, and, take this for what it's worth, Joel. I think Rory, this is famous last words here, might be my least favorite of the four just because of the ownership.
I really hope he proves you wrong, but I totally understand why. Joe, I'd love to hear from you. Do you buy into this caddy narrative at all? Or do you think it has any credence for success this week?
I've never been I think a caddy's important, but I probably feel it's less important than a lot of folks do. I was honestly pretty surprised that JT didn't just grab him after that win. I know his caddy's been kind of fighting back for a back injury, so I don't know if it's the old you don't want to lose your job to an injury thing and JT's loyalty and all that. But I was I was pretty surprised that JT didn't just lock him up, at least for, the next month or so, coming off a win at Harbortown. But I think we might have reached the point of season of like Morikawa burnout. I think we all thought Morikawa was going to have a huge year. He's played really well. He's been, kind of fighting to get wins. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but a ton of like top 10s and top 5s. We just hadn't seen that win. And maybe I think to me that this change probably signifies that he's feeling the same way. Like he feels like he's playing good, but he's probably frustrated he's not winning. So I think that's probably the psychology behind the change. And in a vacuum, Morikawa is probably a really good play this week. Great ball striker off the tee, excellent iron player. We've seen him improve around the greens. So, there's a lot to like about Morikawa this week.
I think I agree. I think he needed to make a change, and maybe that will propel him. Maybe they'll give him some momentum, and maybe we'll get a spike really good result this week. Before we wrap up tonight, last thing before we go out, we'll do who are you surprised was not taken? And, Caitlin mentioned it in the chat. I agree. I was considering Spieth at one point with my first pick. Somehow he went completely undrafted. I think Spieth is definitely on my radar this week, someone that should be considered. He's playing really well. His form is, if we're talking about, who are guys that are in the right form playing well, Jordan Spieth is definitely one of them. So I'm going to put him as my guy who is my biggest surprise didn't get drafted tonight. Joe, what about you? Who is your biggest surprise in terms of not getting drafted on the show tonight?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys really. We're probably very, very rarely going to see a tournament where we pick this many golfers and Ludwig Aberg's not selected. I think a lot of people are probably looking ahead to next week with him, and the form's kind of been up and down a little bit, and Tommy Fleetwood, is a guy that we talk about kind of the burnout of not getting wins, and that's probably where a lot of folks are with Tommy. But I mean, Spencer knows I really like playing him. Just a super consistent player, and this is his type of track. If that win in America is going to come, this might be a good spot. So really surprised to not see Tommy come off the board.
All right, I love it. Spence, how about you? Who are you surprised did not go in the draft tonight?
I mean, I'm surprised Spieth did not go based off of the fact that he's almost 30% owned in my model. For me specifically, I would rather play the Hovlands, Fleetwoods, Henleys, and if I was going to go into that chalky range, I would rather play Cantlay. So, I mean, I'm not surprised he wasn't taken based off of what I would have done, but at 30% ownership, you would think at least mathematically one of us would have probably likely have taken him. For me, the name that I don't know about the most surprised, but the name that I would have loved to have seen taken, and it's funny because somebody in the audience said his name, I want to say in the very first round, and then he never got picked on the board, Sepp Straka. It's a really nice course fit for Sepp Straka. So, none of us took him, and maybe that was just a product of what roster construction ended up becoming. I think you should consider Sepp Straka this week, though.
Yeah, I considered him there.
Oh, sorry, Joe. I was just going to ask Spence, and I want to ask you too. Like, who are you surprised? Who are you surprised? Are you surprised somebody went as high as they did tonight? Because I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised by the Victor Hovland going there. I love Vic, but the consistency. The upside's obviously there. He's going to win this year, but I was kind of surprised to see Victor go that high.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that one. I mean, my biggest surprise is number one, Wyndham Clark. I was surprised he went that early, but Spencer made a statement with the first pick, and I certainly understand the reasoning. Spence, what about you? Who are you surprised in terms of how early they were drafted?
This is a really boring answer, Joel. I kind of think for the most part, this draft was relatively standard with the way that it went. Like, we made a point at the very beginning where it went value, value, value. The audience then jumped up a little bit from our $7,000 picks and took an $8,600 and a $9,100 golfer. And then it kind of trickled back down to these kind of value to where then I pushed it back up towards the top. To me, you could reconstruct almost any of these lineups in the order that they were taken. And maybe that's where some of these guys got quote unquote overdrafted. And maybe that's like the Wyndham Clark part of the answer. But if you look at my build specifically, if I just start Xander Thomas Clark, I mean, then there's really nothing to bat an eye over there. So I kind of feel like everything is relatively standard, and that's a boring answer to give, but I don't think anybody went so outside of the box. Like that would have been if I took Nick Dunlap. That would have been the wild card out of nowhere selection, but I don't see that with any of the 4 builds. I think that to the very core of what every lineup is, you probably have top 40 golfers. And I mean, how much better can you get than that when 24 names are taken off the board?
I think that's fair enough. And I will say, I'm aligned with you on the Straka one too. His ball striking has been absurd. I mean, if you just take a deeper look, he's been absolutely striping the ball. So for someone whose ball striking has been that good at only the 8K range, I think Strapper's really interesting and surprised he didn't get taken tonight. That's a wrap for tonight. We super appreciate you guys coming on. But Joe, we super appreciate you. Your insights were fantastic. Before we get you out of here tonight, tell everyone where can they find your content and what else are you doing this week?
Yeah, man, you can always find me over at rotoballer.com, the home of Spencer Aguiar. Come check us out, man. We feel like we've got a great team over there. We got Spencer, Joe Idoni, Ian McNeil does a great course preview, and we've got a ton of great contributors doing player news. I mean, even something as small as a player news post, you can sometimes pick up a really nice little nugget. So just visit the site, give us a shout, and we of course would love it if you signed up for premium. We think it's a great value. You can use promo code NEW on that and save some money. So check us out at rotoballer.com. There every week, and we'll be there the rest of the week. And I really appreciate you guys having me on tonight.
No, Joe, we appreciate you. Your insights are fantastic as always. We'd love to have you back on again. But don't forget, we're crowning a king of the draft this week. So audience, let us know which lineup you think is going to win. We'll be voting on who we like the most, and then we'll crown a champion and do it again next week. Good luck this week. And Spence, did I forget anything?
Just really quickly, once again, want to thank Joe for coming on with us. He is my brother in this space. It's, I would not be where I'm at without him. We've done this from stage 1 together. So it's always an honor when I can get on with Joe to talk golf. So thank you for coming on, Joe, and good luck to everyone this week that is either betting or playing DFS for this event.